What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Joe here from Blue Line Woodworks, and in this video I'm gonna make a beehive. So we are adding some bees to the backyard farming operation, and I'm just gonna show you the process. Now, none of this is new. I didn't come up with any of this, and most of this build process is gonna be the same as it was in the 1800s. So I've got a Langstroth 10 frame hive plan here, and then I'm also gonna be utilizing some plans from the Beekeeper's Workshop. It's a YouTube channel, hasn't been active in a couple of years, but some really good info on that channel. So hopefully I'm just gonna spruce it up, make it my own, some small changes, but we're gonna get it built. We've got a package of bees coming in, so gotta get this thing ready for them. So stick around if you wanna see how I build a beehive. So I spent some time at the miter saw and the table saw getting all of the main hive components cut to their dimensions. Now, all of the dimensions that I used can be found on the internet and on this piece of paper here. But in case you're a visual learner like I am, I'll just put them up on the screen here as I go through them. So for the bottom board, you're gonna need a 3/4 inch piece of plywood cut at 21 5/8 by 15 1/2. You're also gonna need a couple of 1x material pieces. So these are all 3/4 of an inch thick. You're gonna need one at 15 1/2. Width is 1 7/8. Then you're gonna need two pieces cut at 22 inches long. And again, 1 7/8 of an inch wide, 3/4 of an inch thick. So there were two of those. And then you're gonna need one piece that is 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch, and it's 14 5/8 long. Those are all the components for the bottom board. Now for the actual hive bodies, like I mentioned, actually I don't know if I mentioned it, I'm doing all medium bodies. So I'm not doing a deep, medium, and shallow. I'm doing all medium. From my research, that seems to be the popular thing, and then you only have to deal with one frame size. So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna be making 4 hive bodies. So I have 8 pieces cut at 16 1/4 inches, and 18 pieces cut at 19 7/8. So again, it's all 1x material. It's 3/4 of an inch thick. 8 16 1/4, 8 19 7/8. The inner cover, you're supposed to use 1/4 inch plywood. Well, I thought I had some here, but I don't, but I had 1/2 inch, so I'm gonna use 1/2 inch. But just know all of the plans say to use 1/4, but I wasn't gonna go buy a big sheet of plywood for this because I thought I already had some. So if you're gonna use the 1/4 inch plywood like you're supposed to, you could probably just buy a 1/2 sheet unless you have another use for it. But the actual plywood piece is going to be 19 1/8 by 15 7/16. And that is gonna be the inner cover. We're gonna end up cutting a little oval in here later. And then the little frame pieces for this, they're all 3/4 by 3/4. You got 2 at 19 7/8 and 2 at 15 1/2. So those are the components for the inner cover. And again, if you wanna just skip ahead, you can. I'm just gonna be getting into a bunch of dados and rabbits and stuff, but I just wanted to take the time to lay out all of the dimensions. The outer cover, this is again gonna be 3/4 inch thick plywood. And that piece is gonna be 21 1/4 by 17 1/2. And then the frame pieces for these are all gonna be 2 1/4 inches wide. You got 2 at 18 1/4 and 2 at 21 1/4. Again, 1x material, they're all 3/4 of an inch thick. So those are the components for the outer cover. We'll be covering that in some like aluminum sheeting at the end just to help with the rain. But those are the components. I'm not doing a screened bottom board just because again, like I'm just starting beekeeping and the screen mesh stuff is expensive. So I don't want to go buy a big roll for this when I can just use plywood to see if I like it first. I'm not building a hive stand because this is going to be up on cinder blocks sitting on like a little timber frame, so it's going to be up off the ground, so I don't need to build a hive stand. I've got the bottom board, it's good to go. And the medium hive bodies I think are just going to make everything a little easier. So I'm going to get into cutting some dados. Let me just go show you what I set up on the table saw, because I'm going to be using finger joints, box joints, whatever you want to call them, on this. Now, if you don't have a dado set or you don't have a router and you don't want to be messing with finger joints, you can just use rabbets, or if you really wanted to, you could just butt joint screw them. That'll work too. I'm just going off of a variety of different plans. The Beekeeper's Workshop, he used rabbets with a spline in there. I have a dado set and I want to put it to work, so I'm gonna show you that setup. So before I start cutting all these dados, I just want to show you the little jig that I made. It took me about 5 minutes. So I have a scrap piece of wood attached to my miter gauge on my table saw. I ran that through the dado stack by itself to create a little hole on the back there. Then I took another scrap piece and I cut another hole with the dado stack. And then I had a 3/4 by 3/4 scrap piece that I used some CA glue and glued it to this. Now, as far as setting this up, I just placed another 3/4 by 3/4 block next to the dado blade and moved this right up next to it so that my spacing was correct, and went to the back and just screwed the two boards together so that I don't have to worry about clamping it. So that's the setup. It's pretty simple. The box joints are going to be 3/4 by 3/4. That's just what this plan says. So as long as your overall dimensions of the outside of the hive are 19 7/8 and 6 1/4, I think finger joints, you're good for whatever. So I'm going to cut the long sides first and then the short sides, and you'll see the difference. So let's get to cutting. As you can see behind me, I got all of the box joints done, but now I need to run a rabbet in all of the short pieces, and more specifically the top of the short pieces, so that it can accept the frames. Now, this cut is going to require a 5/8 of an inch wide cut, so I took one of the stacks out of my dado, so the dado is now 5/8 of an inch. And then I just threw on this little scrap piece of wood here and clamped it down and brought that up really tight to the blade. I just didn't want to bring my fence up there because I didn't want to mess up my fence in case I got it too close to the blade. But it is touching the blade. So I ran a test piece through. I highly recommend you do that. That way you know that the depth is right. So it is, there's the rabbet right there. 5/8 of an inch down, and this little lip here is 3/8 of an inch wide. So the frames will just sit right on there. So every short piece, the top inside gets this rabbet. So just make sure you keep your orientation right, and I'm just gonna run them through and get all these rabbets done. Hive bodies are assembled, so now I'm going to move on to the bottom board. So the 3 pieces for the bottom board that are going to make the frame need a 3/4 inch wide by 3/8 of an inch deep dado. So I'm going to take care of that on the table saw. I have the 5/8 inch still in there, but it's set at 3/8 of an inch deep. So I just made a couple of reference lines here. Let me see if I can focus that in on one of the boards. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to run each board through, sneaking up on that one line. I'll run all 3 through, and then I'm just going to move the fence that last 1/8 of an inch to clean it up, and each board will be the same. So I only needed to mark one board. And then on the 2 22-inch pieces, you can see on this back corner here, I've scribed a line that is 3/4 of an inch down, and these need to be dadoed out because they are going to be a little rabbit that is going to attach to the 15.5-inch piece in the back. So I'm going to stop rambling and just get to cutting. For the most part, all of the dados that I've been cutting have been the same, right? It's like right and centered in the board to fit the plywood. But for the top cover, I just wanted to touch on this. It's a 3/4 inch wide rabbet, 3/8 of an inch deep. So 3/8 of an inch, 3/4. Now the long pieces just get that one single rabbet like that. But the short pieces get that initial same rabbet, but then you need to carve out a 3/4 inch from the ends on each thing, where it's still 3/8 of an inch, but that way, that is the half lap there. So it'll fit like that, and then the plywood will just sit right on top of that little rabbet shelf there. So just wanted to touch on that while I assemble it in case you thought it was weird that it looked like that. This one was different. I'm in the process of getting the Hive structures all sanded, and I'm putting an outdoor protective finish on them, but I need some handles. Now the typical cove style handle, that's a lot of work to make a jig and to get them looking right. Now if I had a lot of time, I might give that a go, but I mean, the bees gotta have somewhere to live, and I waited kind of last minute. So I decided to cut 5-inch long handles. I had some scrap walnut laying around, so I thought, why not? We'll make it look a little nicer. So 5 inches long, and then I put a 45-degree bevel on the top to help rain just fall off if it gets wet. Not a big deal, you don't really have to do that. But this gives you a nice handhold, and all I'm doing is centering it on the short sides of the bodies. And I just have this, I don't know, let's see how long this is. This is 1.5 inches wide, and I'm just putting that on the top as a reference, and then I'm centering this handle. So that's it. There's no like right or wrong way to do it, just kind of whatever's comfortable for you. And you don't have to be fancy with the handles. You could just have a strip of wood going across and that's good to go. So that's kind of all I'm doing. I'm just gluing the back side here, throwing a couple brad nails in, that'll be plenty. And then I'm throwing finish on them after I sand them. So just kind of wanted to let you know what I was doing for the handles. The Hive bodies have their first coat of finish on them, so as that first coat is drying, I'm gonna shift my attention to frames. Now, realistically, cost-effective, time-wise, it probably just makes more sense to buy frames, to be honest with you. Buy them unassembled and put them together. But I'm gonna build them just because I feel like it. Now, I'm gonna start with the sidebars, and the sidebars I'm gonna be using 2x8 material, so I'm hoping I can get 24 sidebars out of this one 12-inch piece. I need at least 40 frames, so I've got 4 pieces, and I just cut them into 12-inch sections so they're a little easier to manage when I'm running them through the table saw, that kind of stuff. Now, in another video that I saw, for some reason, they didn't plane these to start because these are 1.5 inches, and basically this is going to be cut into a bunch of sections, so we're going to get sidebars out of here, and the sidebars need to be 1 3/8 inches. So instead of planing, they made extra cuts at the table saw. I don't really understand why, because this just seems way simpler to throw this through the planer first. So I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll find out why you shouldn't do that later, and I'll share that with you, but I think that's going to work. I can't think of any reason why it wouldn't. So I'm going to run these 4 pieces that I cut through the planer to get them all at 1 3/8 inches, and then I'm going to take them to the table saw and rip them at 6 1/4 because I am making frames for medium body hives. If you're using a deep or a shallow super, it changes. So these are for medium. Back at the table saw, and I got the dado blades back in. So on these pieces for the sidebars, I planed them down and I ripped them to 6 1/4 inches wide. So now make sure you put a little mark on each board which way you want to be the top, that way you don't get it confused. But on the top there's going to be a 7/8 of an inch wide dado, and it's going to be 7/16 of an inch deep. And then on the bottom you're going to have a 3/4 inch dado that is 3/8 of an inch deep, and you're going to have 5/16 on each side. Now in a later step, a little bit of that is going to get trimmed out because the bottom section of the sidebar is more narrow than the top. So the top is going to have a 1/4 inch on each, and just make sure that that dado at the bottom is centered. So you should have 5/16 on each side. So I'm going to get these cut. I just marked out the lines. I got a 5/8 inch dado in there, and I'm just going to creep up on the lines and we'll get it done. Almost the last step for these sidebars is to trim off a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch from each side from the bottom of the sidebar. So that's what I've been doing. I just set my bandsaw fence to just under 1/8 of an inch from the fence to the blade, and I set up a little stopper. And this is ultimately what they look like. So the top is 1 3/8 inches, the bottom is 1 1/8 inches. So it's just trimming it up. This top section is 2 5/8, and this bottom section is 3 5/8. So I've just got my little stop with the line, and I'm just going and trimming them and then they rip right off. So after this, I'm just gonna go in and make little tiny relief cuts on these just to make them look nice so that there are no sharp edges. But that's kind of what I've been doing for a minute. So I've only got about 20, 25 more left to go, so not too bad. But you should probably just buy your frames. Alright y'all, so that is a wrap on the beehive building video. I'm just going to walk over here and show y'all the current setup. So, I've only been stung one time and it was completely my fault. The bees are very gentle and for the most part they leave you alone. So, like I can sit right here, no issue. But I have two hive bodies. Those are full of frames, so they are pulling comb, filling it with honey, the queen's laying eggs, all the good stuff, all the things that they're supposed to do. I ended up adding this little spacer block before the inner cover just to give them a little bit more room because I use that 1/2-inch plywood. So if you use 1/4-inch plywood for the inner cover, you're not going to have that problem. And then they have an internal feeder in this hive body for now that's just filled with sugar syrup so that they get a little extra boost because they're a package of bees. They started with nothing. So that is the beehive right there. As you can see, I didn't build the stand because it's just on these cinder blocks here. But the setup works well. So far, so good. And I hope that you enjoyed the video. Now, I am going to be rebranding over the next few weeks, maybe a month tops. Really just a name and the logo is going to change. Content, is going to stay primarily woodworking, but we are going to have some like backyard farming type stuff thrown in the channel like it already is. So really no big change, just the name. Just wanted to give you a heads up on that, but thank you guys as always for the support. If you're not subscribed, consider doing so, and make sure you follow me on Instagram and Facebook. But I'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks again.